I want to thank Arena Stennett, who I'm sure will be here any minute now, for taking the minutes this month. Since this is a new meeting format, please note a few important ground rules. If you are participating via Zoom, please mute yourself unless you are speaking. When speaking, please switch on your video so we can see you. If you are a non-community board 7 member, please state your full name and affiliation with the district. Our agenda tonight is packed, so everyone should try their best to keep their comments brief. Please collect your thoughts and even try putting them down on paper before speaking. If your question has already been answered, please don't ask it again. And if your point has already been made, then just say that you agree with the person who made that point instead of repeating it entirely. And most importantly, please be respectful of each other and all participants. Any disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. And you will be muted online and or asked to leave. And with that, I want to start our meeting agenda item number 1, which is the reconstruction of the concession and addition of the pergola structure at Mineral Springs in Central Park. I believe Richard Lewis and Jason Gold, Tony Macari, are you all here who will be presenting?
Yes, and Joy Gutierrez.
Before you start, I need to make an announcement that I am very good social friends with Richard's, I think, sister-in-law, Pat Sappensley. I have no financial interest in this, but I admire his work tremendously. So I will be speaking out and I will be voting.
Great.
Noted. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Gutierrez, and I am the Parks Revenue and Concessions Architect. I am joined this evening by Tony Macari, Director of Concession Architecture and Development at Parks, Jason Gold and Richard Lewis of Richard H. Lewis Architects. We are here today to present a design for the reconstruction and addition of a pergola structure at Mineral Springs in Central Park. As you may already know, the Snack Bar Cafe is located near 69th Street and West Drive and sits adjacent to the Sheep Meadow. The original pavilion, designed by Calvert Vaux and Jacob Ray Mould, was built in 1867 in a Moorish style and was created as a venue for selling mineral waters believed to have medicinal properties during that period. The current building, as we know, was constructed around 1960 to replace this original Mineral Springs Pavilion, which had fallen into disrepair and was demolished that same year. Since then, the building has housed a food concession, which continues to the present day. Le Pain Quotidien has been the licensed concessionaire successfully operating the cafe at this site since 2010 and is a well-liked and highly used amenity in Central Park. This park's concession was competitively bid through a request for a proposal process in 2022 and is being operated under the terms of a 15-year license agreement between the City of New York and Le Pain Quotidien, LPQ. This term expires in 2037. Under the terms of the recent concession renewal between the city and LPQ, they are contractually obligated to make improvements to the site, which also include the recently completed renovation of the public restrooms. And they also plan to restore in kind the existing slate roof and cupola at a future phase. Today, we would like to show you the design of a pergola structure at the existing outdoor dining area, where I would like to note the footprint will remain the same and not expand. Parks is completely supportive of this design by LPQ and their architects, and we believe it will greatly enhance and make this truly a year-round facility to be enjoyed in all weather conditions by local residents and visitors of Central Park. The architectural firm working with LPQ is Richard H. Lewis Architect, and they have a long history of work in the New York food industry, including the renovation of Tavern on the Green, also in Central Park. They are represented today by Jason Gold, whom I will turn this over to present the design to all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joy. I would like to be able to share my screen, which I can't do yet.
Are you able to share it now?
Let's see.
Let me know.
Yes, it has popped up, but let's see. Give me a second. There's like some security protocol that's my computer is asking me to go through. Okay, looks like I can do it now. Great. Can everyone see the rendering on the screen? Is that a yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for being patient while I got our computers to talk to one another. So thanks, Joy, for that background. I'd also like to thank you all for the opportunity to present this proposal for improvements at the Le Pan Quotidien concession at Mineral Springs in Central Park. I'd also like to thank Tony and Joy and all the folks at Parks, the Central Park Conservancy, and the Landmarks Preservation Commission, who have been our partners over these past 2 years as we developed this proposal. Central Park is, of course, not only one of the most celebrated and visited places on Earth, but also one of the most valuable assets in the everyday lives of New Yorkers. Your community bordering in the park has a vested local interest in ensuring that all work in the park advances its role in your community, in the city generally, and in the world. And we look forward to your feedback and your partnership as well. Joy already talked about the history of the LPQ concession and the history of the building. So let me just show you a few images. Joy covered the location in the park, which is in the southern portion of the park, more toward the west side at the northern edge of the sheep meadow. It's a closer view. This is the existing building. This was the site of the old Moorish building, which is now the Bowling Green. Sheep Meadow is across the lower part of this drawing, and there's a copse of rocky outcroppings and gorgeous old trees that surround the existing building. Here is the old Moorish structure, and that was demolished in 1960, and the brick and slate roofed with a whitewood cupola building that replaced it in that same year. This is a sense of all the functions that are contained within the building. This is the concession, the Le Pan Quotidien kitchen, sales area. They have a small interior seating area. These are the public restrooms that Joy referred to, and all the rest of this space is space that's used as storage and staging by the Parks Department and Central Park Conservancy. The outdoor space includes seating area in front of the building. The entrance to the concession is here. Seating area behind the building, which is the area that we'll be talking most about today. And then beyond that, a large open work yard, which is used again by Parks and the Central Park Conservancy for vehicles and storage and project work that is very ongoing. And this is a pretty active walkway with people and vehicles. This gives you a bit of a sense of some more distant views from the site. This is from the road right near Cherry Hill and the just a few steps from Bethesda Fountain back toward the site, which is in this rectangle. And then some slightly closer views, just to give you a sense of how this whole facility kind of nestles into the landscape and under the shade of these gorgeous mature trees that is all around it. Some closer views of the existing site, the 1960s building. This is a wood trellis structure that was approved in 2009, which will be removed. This is the existing patio, which is asphalt, which will be replaced, although the extent of paving will actually go down a bit. You'll see when we get to a bigger plan. You can get a sense of the kind of furniture, and it's all outdoors. The trellis provides some minimal weather protection. And this gives you a sense of how all of the pieces fit together. Closer up, the trellis, as I said, would go, this wooden screen would go, this masonry wall at the bottom would remain. This fence that this wood fence that divides between the concessionaire space and that service depot area, that would also remain. You get a sense of the stuff that's all stacked up in the service area. There's also another masonry wall closer to the existing building that houses a trash storage area that would also remain. This is the back entrance to the building, and this will be retained as the access from the kitchen in the original building and the existing building to the dining area in the proposed structure. There's also a low retaining wall that allows this plaza area to remain level, even though the site itself is a little bit sloped, and that will also stay. Existing plan, proposed plan. The next sheet shows them closer up, so I think it's easier to see there. So you can see that, in fact, we're slightly reducing the extent of paved area to introduce some more plantings and allow this to nestle better into the landscape. Instead of just this open plaza, what we're proposing are these 5 pergola structures that all are joined together. The pergolas have louvered roofs that are motorized, and the louvers can open so that you can sit under the pergola in fine weather and see the blue sky and see the gorgeous old trees. But if the weather turns, or if we're in the cold season, the roof can be closed and will be waterproof. There also are retractable screens facing the park and the path that actually roll up into the beam of the pergola. And again, those are motorized, and at night for security reasons, and when the weather isn't great, those can be lowered to enclose the space. But the idea is that during the fine weather, this would be completely open to the air. In fact, we're not planning to install any air conditioning because it's completely open. There will be heating for the times in the cold seasons when this space will be more enclosed. Joining this structure to the existing building here is a service and access area, which will utilize the existing low masonry walls and be built as a tented canvas structure with a metal frame that will connect the new pergola piece to the existing building. The site will be paved with bluestone. You'll see we have samples of the material shown a little bit later on. This is a roof plan that shows the louvered roof, the tented roof, and the open areas surrounding the space. This, to go back a second, this right here is a door that is the winter entry time when this area will be enclosed rather than totally open. Elevations, which can be a little abstract to look at because they sort of flatten things out, but just to give you a sense of how all the pieces relate, this is looking at the side of the existing building. There's that trash area that I pointed out. There's that door to the existing kitchen. These are all windows that look into this looks into the kitchen, but these look into the park's service area. This is their sort of roll-up door for storing larger things. And then our structure nestles into that on the existing plaza area. This shows it when it's fully open. This piece here would have glass with wood louvers behind it to create sort of a special little room for a special dining experience. And then this shows it in the cold weather when the screens are rolled down, the screens being partly transparent and partly translucent. Another view of the existing building, and then this is showing the existing wood fence with the new pergola peeking up behind it. So this is looking at it from the service bay. Some renderings showing the warm weather mode and the cold weather mode. So here the structure is totally open. Here the structure is enclosed, but minimally enclosed. And you can see the door right here that is used for cold weather access. Frontal view that gives you a sense of the special room with the louvered panel, the totally open view with the sun coming through the open louvered ceiling, and then the more enclosed version for the cold weather. A view again of the more up close of the way that this sits along the path. And then, although it's not really an object of this particular presentation, we thought it would be important for the communities that we're talking to have a sense of what the interior of this new pergola pavilion would look like, both with the louvers closed and with the louvers open. So it's sort of like this amazing sunroom when the sun is there to enjoy. And then a slightly more pulled away view that shows this nestled into the surrounding park with the existing building, and again, the large old trees and the rocky outcroppings and the lawns that look out toward the direction of Bethesda Fountain. Some precedents within mostly Central Park, but also within another Olmsted and Oaks Park, Prospect Park, just showing that, first of all, there are more modern buildings that have found a wonderful home in Central Park, such as the much beloved Delacorte Theater, which is about to undergo a renovation, and the new Harlem Mir Center that's under construction in the northern part of Central Park. There are also the idea of a pergola is pervasive throughout the park and takes many, many, many different forms. It's not like there's one standard way to make a pergola in Central Park. So we have a sort of neoclassical take on the pergola at the Loeb Boathouse, a very rustic take on the pergola along the pathways along the West Park Drive, a very mod pergola that was recently approved at the Vale of Kashmir in Prospect Park, which again, it's not Central Park, but by the same landscape designer and architect, the original plan. And then the recently renovated Chess and Checkers House has more of a garden style pergola. But the point is that the pergola form is pervasive throughout the park. So we are picking up on that in looking at creating the structure that we're creating. The materials, this shows the partly translucent and partly transparent screens. In the service areas, there would be quarry tile floor. In the public areas would be bluestone paving and a running bond. The tent material over the service area would be just black sunbrella fabric. I mentioned louvered panels for that special space of the under the pergola. So this is the louvered panel, solid metal panels facing that fence, which will mostly cover them. And then this gives a sense of the louvered ceiling and the ceiling fans that will be used for air circulation. And then in the winter, there'll be heaters that are integrated into the structure. Lighting is also integrated into the actual louvers of the ceiling. And then from the manufacturer of the pergola system, just some other roughly analogous installations that are already extant, just to give you a sense of what these look like when they're actually installed and how sort of open and clean and simple they really are. So thank you so much again for the opportunity to present this, and you know, all of us here are happy to answer any questions that you may have about this proposal.
Thank you very much. I think we will go around the room first with any questions. Does anybody here have any questions? Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
First of all, I just wanted to say congratulations. I think the idea of your modernized pergolas is fantastic. I love them. And but I did have a couple of questions, please. The ceiling, are those louvers that can open and close, or in the winter, or do they stay? Are they permanently closed? What is the ceiling?
The louvers are fully operable, so they can open or close, and they are motorized, so it's literally with the push of a button. The louvers would be made of wood, so they'll pick up on the sort of natural materials that are all around you in the park. And again, they can, if it's a gorgeous day and a thunderstorm comes along, you push a button and you close up the roof, and everyone can continue enjoying their sandwiches and snacks.
Great. Also, is the structure heated inside in the winter?
Yes, the structure is heated. There are these bromic heaters that we would be using that would be installed on the beams, so that they're fully integrated. They're not embedded in the beams, but they're installed on the beams, so they're integrated into the structure itself.
Thank you.
Sure, and these are electric, they're not gas.
Hi, I just have 3 quick questions for you. This space is a place that's very near and dear to our family's hearts. We are there probably once or twice a week, so we know that space, that specific space in the back of the LPQ very well. I guess I have 1 structural question and 2 more material ones. One is, how long do you expect it to take to construct this?
Okay, do you want to ask all the questions and then?
I'm happy
Want me
to
to answer them one at a time?
That's my structural question. My other 2 are that we value that space because it's a very open space. It's open to everyone.
Yes.
It's open to people, it's open to dogs, it's open to people who come in, tourists, locals, everyone. The space that I saw tonight, I'm curious, and it leads into my 3rd question, which is about private events. And we went through this, and I was the chair of the board when we went through Tavern on the Green, making sure that the space will remain a truly public space for people who want to come into it, and that it's not just going to be reserved for private events. So that was my 3rd question.
Okay, so so first of all, structurally, the whole idea is to keep this as open as possible. And in terms of how long it's going to take to build, there's the pergola itself is a system. And so it will take less than 2 weeks to erect the pergola with all of its parts. However, there's site work that will need to be done beforehand to prepare for the installation of the pergola, such as removal of existing stuff and pouring a new slab. And then after the pergola is installed, then we'll install the stone. So all in all, it would probably be about 6 weeks. And depending on when we get, that's the current plan. And depending on when we get our approvals, we would love to be able to do it during during February, March, before the weather starts to warm and people have a yearning to head back outside. In other words, during what's now the low season, because the facility can't really support cold weather activities as well. And the plan is to also renovate the interior of the existing building, which being interior work isn't really the subject of this proposal. But the plan is to do that at the same time, even if the 2 don't overlap perfectly.
And Jason, I'll take the party question.
Stunning.
Yeah. So I appreciate, yes. Yes, so it's first of all, it's a very modest space compared to tavern. We're talking about maybe 60 people max in the space itself. If there's any private event that closes the entire facility, Parks would have to review and approve that individually. So they'd have to put in a request to do that. We do envision, it'd be a great venue for like small showers or communion parties or graduation parties, that kind of thing, maybe a brunch party here and there. But the intent really is for this space to be open to the public as the space is now. Completely in the fine weather days, that whole front would be open and you could still walk in and out with your dog and sit as you do now. So the nature of the space really is intended not to change dramatically from its current use. It's just to extend the season so that now we can get 365 days of use for the public there.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have questions.
Oh yeah, Lorena, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not there. I couldn't get there on time. So, and I am taking notes. I don't know if someone else started. I have a couple of questions. The first is, are we, I know that the speaker, Jason, thank you for your thorough presentation. And I just want to say that while I'm a trustee of the Central Park Conservancy, I'm here as a board member, not as a trustee. Jason, you talked about reusing some of the storage space. I don't know if it's a reuse or if some of that storage and workspace is going to be maintained by the Conservancy and the Parks Department, but I'm just curious whether the footprint remains the same, and if you're just capturing space that, are you just capturing some additional space from the storage area, or is we're dealing with the same footprint? I'm just curious, and what the increase in tables will be.
Okay, so first of all, the footprint does not change. You can see in this existing and proposed plan that this tall wood fence that divides between the Parks and Conservancy area and the LPQ area is staying in place. So that stays the same. What we are doing is, by reconfiguring our space, we are capturing some of our own space as storage because it's an irregular site, and our pergola frame structure is made of regular rectangles. So there are leftover spaces that allow us to create a little patio, a little garden area, planted area, and a small storage area. And so that's all coming from the space that's currently LPQ space. And the intention is to keep the number of patrons served at any given time the same. We're not increasing the seating capacity. However, obviously, by being open 365 days a year, rather than 200 days a year, we're vastly increasing the capacity of LPQ to serve the public.
Thank you. And then so what happens to the workspace and the storage space? Is there going to be, is the Parks Department or the Conservancy planning any enhancements to this area? Is it just going to remain the way that it looks, which is not particularly attractive?
Tony or Joy, anything on the boards there?
There's nothing planned to, other than this cleaning it up and screening it more. There's no plans at this time.
Okay. And then I just want to go back to your comment, Anthony, in response to Elizabeth's concern about, now that this space will be enclosed and accessible during the off season, which now there won't be, this idea of now, hosting showers and events in the space. I hope that we don't really go down that rabbit hole. I mean, I understand it gives the Parks Department an opportunity to generate revenue, But as Elizabeth explained, this is a very popular place for park users. And I would really hate to see the Parks Department take advantage of the enclosure and start, having events in this space. So I would hope that if there are going to be events, that we can maybe put a cap on the number of events per season, because I just would hate to see this turn into an event space.
Agreed, and neither, Parks shares that thought. We don't want this to be, really a wholly an event space. So like I said, if there is an event or proposal to shut down the entire facility, they need Parks approval for that. And again, they hold events there now. They have tented events and they use that space for small parties and things. So we see that kind of continuing as it is now. But again, just extending the season so that can happen more frequently in the
Right,
colder months.
but that's my point. I mean, that's my point. It happens currently. LPQ hosts events there currently, and right now they're not really hosting them at a frequency that displaces the general public, because remember, this is a public building. But now they are going to have an extended year, and they can probably start hosting even more events. And I see this as an opportunity to bring the public back in at a time when they, in the past, would not be able to use the venue. And then all of a sudden now we can't use it because it's being used for private events.
No, again, I mean, the formula would remain the same in the off season. And again, there's, no service to the public in the off season, which now we are offering that 365 days a year for everybody, for dog walkers and people just visiting the park. And that is the intent of this space. Really, it's not meant to be a party going space. Although, as a supplemental use, they can do it upon approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else online who wanted to ask a question, a community member or a board member? Alex, do you know?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, Susan, do you?
I have questions.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify a few things. So the financing is being provided entirely by LPQ? Is that, okay.
That's
How
Yes.
much,
Yes.
Yes.
can I ask how much would this project cost?
I mean, at this point, we haven't put this out to bid.
Oh.
No, we don't really know yet. I don't know, Tony and Joy, you might have some better.
So their license agreement with LPQ, they have a $1.67 million commitment for all of the work that they're doing in the building. That includes the bathroom restoration. They're redoing the roof, which they've already done. They're, as Jason mentioned, doing some interior improvements plus this extension. That's their minimum investment, so it could go over, but that's really on them if it goes over. I'm sure that they'd like to keep it, on budget, but they're obligated to spend at least that much.
Okay, and tonight over here, you're only looking for a resolution for the outdoor pergola structure. You're not looking for anything for the restroom, the interior reconstruction, nothing like that, just the pergola structure. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, those were my questions. You can.
I was also curious about the budget, but Natasha covered it. Thank you so much. I'm curious, is there going to be any glass? I wasn't clear on that.
Yes,
Any
there
window?
will be some glass. Let me go to the more larger scale plan. Here we go. So this is the roll down screen. These are solid metal panels with an opening for access. And then these planes here are glass. These are glass sliding panels that allow access to this little genie patio space. These are fixed glass panels with wood louvers, operable wood louvers behind them. And again, this is to create that sort of like special little nook of a room, sort of like a little garden room. And then this is a door. a swinging door.
My
That-
colleagues will, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That would be mostly transparent.
Okay, my colleagues will not be surprised to hear me ask, what can be done to protect the birds from the glass?
Well, because this glass has louvers behind it, so it won't have the problem with birds because it's not transparent. For this, there are now regulations that require bird marks on large glass surfaces in New York City, so we would certainly follow whatever the regulations are.
Okay,
Ensure that the
and then
birds see this and don't hurt themselves flying into it.
I'm a little concerned about when the louvers are open, that it might appear to be transparent. So I just would urge that be taken into consideration. I'd like to have something in the resolution that talks about that. And then my other concern, I won't go on about it, but I want to echo what's been said by Arena and Elizabeth about the private angle. Because as a bird watcher in Central Park, I've had way too many situations where I've wanted to go and use a particular part of the park and it's been closed for private use. And again, as Arena said so eloquently, I appreciate the need for parks to, raise funds, but it's very upsetting in the peak of migration to be told you can't walk on a particular bridge going into the Ramble, or you can't go access Turtle Pond because it's being used for a private event. It's very frustrating. So I think putting a cap on the number of events would be a good idea.
Yeah, in addition to limiting the events, obviously, and again, seeking approval, we would also require, should an event, close the entire facility, that they give ample notification, put it on their website and signage at the site. So those are all things we make sure happen in the rare event that they take over the entire building.
I appreciate that, but with all due respect, it's very frustrating whether they've informed me ahead of time or not. And during peak migration, I'm not allowed to use part of the park because of fundraising.
Noted, definitely.
Thanks.
I think those were all the comments and the questions.
I'm sorry, Natasha, I was just curious, what is the length of this concession agreement?
Arana, it's 15 years and
Okay.
it will expire in 2037.
Thank you, Joy.
So I'd like to propose a resolution in favor of this with the caveats that have been touched on. One is for the limitation of the private use, and another one, my personal pet peeve, is about the bird proofing of the glass. Just to confirm that the footprint of the space will be unchanged. Anybody else have anything they want to pile in?
I just think that people need to be able to come in from public egress. And if they have animals that they're walking, then there are no restrictions different than what they currently are.
Okay, from what I understood, the glass will always have some part of the louver, even if it's the thin part visible, so that it's not a threat to birds at all. Maybe we can just get some clarification on that.
I think we could just put in the resolution just to confirm that that's our understanding.
Fine, okay.
Anybody want to add anything else in?
No.
But it's great to know that the part that's being funded by LPQ. Yes.
Yeah.
Good news.
I'm sorry. Is the signage changing at all? Okay, thank you.
So should we make a motion to approve the resolution? Everybody voting in favor, please raise your hand. You come.
Elizabeth? Okay, 6 in favor, and Arena, you got it. Oh, sorry, Arena, you're in favor?
Yes, I'm raising my hand in favor.
Arena, I need to ask you a question. Do you have prior approval from the office to attend online?
Well, no, I wasn't planning to attend online until I was told that I was
Yeah,
taking notes, and I couldn't get to the meeting at 6:30. So that's why I'm here taking
I
notes.
understand that, but the rules as they've been confirmed to me by Beverly and Max today is that anybody can attend the meeting, but And if you're on Zoom, unless you have prior approval from the office, your vote cannot be counted.
Right, but you didn't tell me until today that I was supposed to be taking notes. So if I wasn't taking notes, I would be in the room.
Actually, I sent out the email, I think, was it on Friday?
Yeah.
It was on Friday.
I didn't get a notice until today that I was taking notes. If I had been informed or asked prior to the start of this meeting, you know what? Don't count my vote.
Okay.
So I'm sorry,
I'll
once
take
again,
this up
favor?
I'll take this up with Beverly.
Yeah,
Okay, so those in favor, one more time, I'm sorry.
no, yeah.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. Those opposed? 0. Abstaining? 1. Not voting for cause? 0. So the vote is 6 to 0 to 1 to 0. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very, very
you.
much.
All right, moving right along. We'll move on to our second item, which is an update on the reconstruction of the Delacorte Theater and public restroom and the Great Hill public restroom.
Hi,
Is there
Natasha, since I'm technically not in the meeting, I'm gonna excuse myself. I'll send through the notes that I've taken on there's no reason for me to be at this meeting if I can't participate.
No,
I
actually,
see you shaking your head, but
yeah, can I just speak for a minute? And then you can decide if you want to stay or not, that's your decision. But the rules are that unless you have prior approval from the office, you can absolutely participate on the Zoom, and you should, but it's just your vote that cannot be counted. And I didn't make this rule, I'm just telling you what it is.
thank you.
The decision is yours, but the email was sent out back on Friday. I'm not sure why you didn't get it. Everybody else did, but the decision is yours. You can make your own decision. Okay,
I'll stay on the call.
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We value your input, Arena. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sue.
Okay. So the second item is the potential, is the update on the Delacorte Theater and public restroom and the Great Hill public restroom. Is somebody here from Conservancy or the Parks Department?
Yes, so hi, this is it's the Central Park Conservancy. My name is Sandy Huber. I'm the Senior Vice President for Capital Projects for the Central Park Conservancy. I'm here with my colleagues. Thank you for having us this evening. I am maybe new to a lot of folks here, but I'm not new to the Conservancy. I've been here for about 10 years, but new to the role. You may have seen some other folks from our office presenting to everyone over the years. We're here to present just the 2 restrooms, not the Delacorte Theater, just a clarification on that, both the Delacorte restroom and the Great Hill restroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane, who's going to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Am I able to share my screen? Is that okay?
Can you tell us your name? It's very hard to see on the screen. It's very small.
Sure. My name is Diane Jackier-Kestenbaum. I am the Vice President for Program Management at the Conservancy. I'm just trying to, I don't know why this is not working. Sorry, hold on one second. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Sir? Yeah. Can you on the screen just been enabled closed captioning? Thank you.
So-
Thank you.
Just let me know if you're ready for me to start.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Diane Jackier-Kestenbaum. I'm a Vice President for Program Management at the Central Park Conservancy. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am going to just quickly go through the project goals and site locations for both projects, and then we'll start with the history of the Delacorte restroom, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, Nick Koster, our Vice President for Design. So the goals for both of these projects is, as Sandy mentioned, we are proposing to do reconstruction work at both the Delacorte restroom and the Great Hill restroom, as well as some site accessibility work at both projects. So for both of these, we are going to restore the building's exteriors consistent with their historic design. We're going to be installing new windows and doors, restoring any roof elements that have failed, cleaning and repointing the facades, and adding back historic elements that have been lost through the years. Accessibility is one of the Central Park Conservancy's guiding principles, and we are reflecting that in the work that we're doing in these two projects. We are going to be improving the facilities themselves to make them more accessible on the interior by adding accessible stalls and eliminating any steps leading into the buildings. We're also creating accessible routes to the restroom facilities from the park drive. And then we're also going to be upgrading the building systems to reduce our carbon footprint by decommissioning our use of oil and gas and going electric in both buildings. And at the Great Hill, we are going to be making this building a year-round facility. Currently, it's seasonal and closed for several months during the year, but through this project, we're going to make it a year-round facility. I quickly wanted to mention, and I know someone just mentioned the Delacorte Theater project. The intent is for the restroom project to go hand in hand with the theater project, which is starting shortly sometime this fall. So the intent is for the theater project and our restroom proposal to be completed in time for the spring 2025 season. Just to orient everyone to where these projects are in the park, Great Hill is in the northwest part of the park, just in from 106th Street, and the Delacorte restroom is sort of mid-park, close to the Great Lawn, obviously adjacent to the Delacorte Theater, just in on West 81st Street. To give you a bit of history of the Delacorte public restroom, it was built in 1910, close to 1910, just adjacent to what was called the receiving reservoir. This picture on the right from 1915, actually, you can see the receiving reservoir wall right behind the building. This is a pretty clear picture of what the building looked like in 1915. In the 1930s, the receiving reservoir was demolished, and that's what you can see here in this picture on the left. We got a pretty good view of what the building looked like at the time and this ribbon of windows that was there. And then just a few years after the reservoir was demolished, the Great Lawn was built, as well as you can see here Belvedere Lake, which we now call Turtle Pond. It was called Belvedere Lake because of its proximity to Belvedere Castle. And this picture is just, I don't know why it's coming in a little bit fuzzy right now. Shows what the Delacorte Theater looked like when it was just originally in schematic design. The building was nestled in between the restroom building, which is right here, the Great Lawn and Turtle Pond. There we go. I'm now going to turn the project over to Nick to give you more details about what we're proposing.
Great. Thanks, Diane. This is an aerial of the area around the Delacorte public restroom, highlighting the scope of the path work. So the paths included in this project, they really vary in condition in terms of the quality of the paving, and none of the different programs within this area have accessible paths to them from Central Park West. So a big part of this project is making sure that we're able to achieve accessibility for all. Next. A graphic plan showing where we'll be working on the paths, regrading them to create accessibility. The areas that have the blue dot on them, those are highlighting the accessible routes that will be created. And the areas that are highlighted with the purple, minor regrading isn't possible. The slopes are too steep in those areas. So in those areas, we'll need to be constructing both ramps and handrails adjacent to them. Next. This is an example of what those ramps and handrails will look like. This is a detail that we've used on a lot of the landscape restoration projects in the park. This one's over at 86th Street on the west side, coming in from the Central Park West towards the drive. You can see the landings. Those are the areas of the pavers, and there are a handrail on both sides that are set into the asphalt. Next. So as Diane mentioned, the building itself that houses the restroom, both on the outside and on the inside, is going to be undergoing a full restoration and renovation. So these are two existing photos of looking at both towards the men's room and the women's entrance. Next. Just showing you one of the exterior elevations to give you a real sense of the scope of the restoration work. The top is the existing, the bottom's the proposed. We're replacing all the windows and doors with historic windows to match the photographs that you had just seen at the earlier part of this presentation. We'll be fully cleaning and pointing any of the bricks on the facades that are damaged or covered with mold or debris. There are also missing architectural elements on the building. You can see there are the finials at the top of the building. Those have been lost or broken off over time, as well as some decorative light fixtures at the entrances to each of the restrooms. Next. Just showing you in a little bit more detail the work that our extended team is doing on this. So we have some photos showing what the existing historic finials look like on the gables, some current conditions showing where they're missing, and then the replacement detail showing the care that the team's taking to make sure we're matching the historic nature of the building. Next. Same goes for the post and the lanterns, cleaning up the masonry and reconstructing light fixtures to be installed at each of those locations where they've been lost over time. Moving into the inside, we are removing everything. So all of the fixtures, finishes, ceilings. We're also in sort of the back of house space that just the staff uses. There's a stair that is getting removed to make more space for additional fixtures within the public restroom itself. Next. This is a proposed plan of what we'll be installing. So we're happy to report that any of you that are attendees of Shakespeare in the Park and have stood in the long women's room line will be increasing the fixture count in the women's room by 8 fixtures. So that's a very, I think, welcome change to the space. We'll also be, as Diane mentioned, making sure that they're fully accessible and installing baby changing stations in both the men's room and the women's room. Next. In terms of schedule for this, currently working through approvals. We'll be bidding the project in the winter, and to align it with the 2025 season of the Delacorte, we are planning that the construction will take about a year. So closing in the spring of 2024 and reopening in 2025. I'm going to hand it back to Diane, and she's going to walk through the history of Great Hill.
Hi again, everyone. Now we'll just go to Great Hill, giving you a little bit of history about this part of the park. It was once known as Harlem Heights and had panoramic views in all directions of the Hudson River and the Palisades, Long Island Sound, and Manhattan. And because of this, as this 1873 Bogart map shows, there was a carriage drive that was created here to allow people to come and take advantage of those beautiful views. In the early part of the 20th century, there was sort of a shift away from the flexible scenic landscapes in the park, and there was more purpose-built recreational spaces that were created. And the Great Hill is sort of a perfect example of what happened. So there were horseshoe pitching courts here. There were other recreational courts here that were very popular. In 1955, the restroom was built right at the sort of edge of this recreational space to accommodate the large number of people who came to the area. Over the past several decades, the Central Park Conservancy has restored more of those scenic landscapes back and removed the recreational courts and restored paths, installed more infrastructure to address the area, but the restroom still is there, and you can still see the outline of the oval carriage area that was created. I'm going to hand it back over to Nick to go through the details.
Okay. So on this project, like the other, we both have some path work to create an accessible route from the West Drive up to the carriage drive, in addition to site work around the restroom itself and the full restoration of the building. Next. The very similar to the work that we had just shown you for the other project. The blue line is showing the accessible path from the West Drive up to the restroom itself. The lower portion, lower 2/3 of the path, we're able to do some very simple regrading to achieve accessibility, and the upper third will be needing to add a landings, a ramp, and handrails, the exact same detail that we had shown in the previous project. Next, around the restroom itself, it's currently paved with block. The block itself is not an accessible material. As you can see, there's also a 6-inch step up into the restroom. So we'll be removing the block, replacing it with an accessible block, which we've used on various other projects throughout the park, and then subtly grading out the landscape to make a seamless transition back into the park and maintaining the historic patterns that are there in kind. Next. Very similar in exterior scope to the other restroom. We'll be working on the brick, replacing all the windows and doors. In this project, at one point in time, the windows had been bricked over. So we'll be removing those cinder blocks, adding windows that have a sort of a white frosting to them, so you're not really able to see in, but there'll be windows that match the historic design of the restroom. We'll be restoring this drinking fountain that you also see within this elevation. Next. In terms of the interior scope on this project, it's a much smaller building than the other restroom. It's just a single-use stall on both the men's and the women's side, as well as a storage and utility space for the staff that maintains it. So we'll be removing the interior restrooms in their entirety, adding an accessible stall in both, and also baby changing stations in both of the restrooms. And for this project, it is on the same design and approvals as the previous restroom, the Delacorte, and it'll be going out to bid around the same time. This project is much smaller, so we're planning on a 9-month construction schedule for this. So having it run from the spring to the fall of 2024. That's it for our presentation.
Thank you. I think we'll go around the room with any questions or comments. Does anybody have anything?
I have a very minor question. I'm just curious why you have 12 toilets in the women's bathroom near the Delacorte and only 4 sinks.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
I
didn't quite.
missed that question.
You didn't hear me? I'm sorry, I'll repeat it. I don't know where to look because you're on both screens, it's a little complicated, but this is just a curiosity question, okay? You have 12 toilets, I think, in the women's bathroom near the Delacorte, but only 4 sinks. And I wondered how if that is the proportion and why you came up with that.
Yeah, so it's to the plumbing code, and I think that just the turnaround time for the use of stalls is just much longer than the turnaround time for a sink. So we don't foresee it being an issue in terms of the fixture counts.
Okay. Anyone else in the room? Yes, Avi.
I saw with the map of the roads you were making accessible, there was a certain, I forgot the name of it right now, that seemed to be a more direct path to the theater that is not being made accessible. Is there a reason for that?
There is, yeah. So that is a route that is used for service. So for any of the trucks that are bringing in the sets for the theater itself, or any of the really big events that happen in the Great Lawn. And if we were to regrade that and add handrails, we would no longer have access to the Great Lawn or the theater for load-ins. And it's also quite steep, so it wasn't very feasible to accommodate in that location.
Thank you.
Reina, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I think it was Sandy. Sandy, you talked about the restroom at the Great Hill operating. Can you just talk a little about the operating hours of this? What the hours are currently and what you're proposing?
Sure. So the restrooms, they generally open, I think, around 8 in the morning, or as our crews go around to open them, kind of at daybreak. And they generally close, I want to say at dusk or just shortly thereafter, unless there's a specific event that's happening. They'll leave them open longer. And that'll continue obviously with these facilities. And for the Great Hill, currently it's seasonal, so it closes in the wintertime. And with this project, we'll be able to have it open all year round.
So I have a lot of history with this site. I think I worked for the Conservancy for 12 years. And one of the problems we had with the site is, particularly off season, is it's quite desolate. Right? And when I started working in the park, it was actually during the crack epidemic. And this place was a place where a lot of addicts used, as well as the blockhouse. So I'm all for making sure that the community surrounding Manhattan Valley has access to a restroom off season, but it really is going to be important for the Conservancy to think about oversight of this restroom. I mean, we already have problems at the Dana Center restroom, which is also open year round. And so I just really want you to take this back to the team and say, look, we want these restrooms available, particularly for dog walkers who are up there year round. But we just need to be mindful of what's going on Central Park North right now, and with the opioid epidemic, and I know that there are problems already with the Dana restrooms being used for those purposes. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying don't make it a seasonal restroom. I'm just saying if we're going to invest in that, then you have to invest in a fair amount of oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Absolutely. And thank you for that. I will take it back to our park operations folks. and let them know of your concern, and that we want to make sure that this is a safe restroom for everyone. Obviously, that's our intent, to be able to provide this amenity to everyone all year long.
Yeah, and then my only second question has to do, Nick, with your timeline. You said 9 months. So that takes us from spring to fall. What happens with Great Jazz on the Great Hill in the summer of 2024?
Well, I think I can jump in
You're
on
gonna have a
that.
chorus
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we'll figure out. We'll work with our
Okay.
with the team to figure out that. Yeah, that you won't. There will be facilities for sure.
Okay. Okay.
No worry. No worries there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rena.
So can you just clarify what that means? That means that when they're both closed for the construction, there will be alternate facilities available?
So when they're closed, so Arena was just speaking specifically to a large event that happens in that area over the summer. But when they are closed, we'll have up signage directing folks to the closest public restroom in the park.
That's okay. So that's one of my concerns because, for example, at the Great Hill, the closest one could be the Conservatory Garden, which is like way far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll put up signage to direct folks, and we're hoping to have a short construction duration for this, so that we're not inconveniencing anyone too long.
So for the Delacorte restroom, it'll be closed for a year.
Yes.
2025. Wow, that's a long time. Okay. I'm just curious what the budget is for both of these.
Sure. So the Delacorte, which this number includes not only the complete restoration, core and shell restoration of the building, but also the interior fit out and all of the accessibility of the paths that Nick described. So that's $10 million. And then the Great Hill, this is just the comfort station itself, is just a little over $1 million. It's a much smaller scope. It's a newer building.
Is this privately funded, or is this city and the conservancy?
It's a mix. It's a mix of both.
Can you tell us what the percentages are?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head what the percentage is. So for the Great Hill, we received actually some funding through the New York State Dormitory Authority and some private funding from a foundation. And the Delacorte, there is some city funding. We're still continuing our fundraising with that. So we'll see how the mix ends up being when we start in the spring.
Okay, and my final point, I just want to build on what Arena was saying about the safety angle here. I understand from my husband, because I've never been in the men's room at Maintenance Meadow, but I understand from my husband that the doors have been removed from the men's room stalls at Maintenance Meadow. I know we're not talking about the Maintenance Meadow bathrooms right now, but I'm concerned that he was told by some parks workers, the reason for that was that they were being used for drug use and also for people to live in the stalls. But it's a very uncomfortable experience to have to use a men's room with the doors of the stalls removed. Do you know if that's still the case?
Actually, I don't know if that is still the case. I do know that the doors were removed. I can't really actually speak to if they have been replaced or not. My guess is that they probably have been replaced over the decades, but I can't say for 100% certainty.
Could you tell me who we should address this kind of concern?
We can ask our park operations, who maintain our facilities.
That'd be great. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question coming back to the timeline. For one project, the restroom will be closed for a whole year, and for the other project, it'll be closed for 9 months. But a big part of the project is also the making the pots accessible. So my question is, will all the work be done at the same time, or like when the pots are being worked on for accessibility, why can't the restrooms stay open? And then my other The question was at Great Hill, it seems like the capacity is not being increased, like you're just replacing one stall for one stall in both the men's room and the women's room. Is it just because an ADA stall takes up so much space that you just don't have the space for more, or like, is there no way that we can get like more than one, you know?
Sure. So I'll take the Delacorte and then I'll pass it.
You know, just one stall,
Yeah.
you know?
I'll take the Delacorte and then I'll pass the Great Hill to Nick. So for the Delacorte, the 12-month timeline is really driven by the building. So that is a 12-month project. The core and shell and interior fit out of the building. The path work is as a shorter duration. And so it will happen, you know, there will be overlapping work there. So, you know, it's not sequential. You know, we are trying to move it as fast as we can, obviously, so that the project can be complete and open to the public. And then Nick, if you want to talk about the Great Hill.
Yeah, with Great Hill, it's a very tight space. It's a standard parks construction. They're 20 by 20 restrooms. You see them in parks throughout the city. And you are unfortunately really able only to fit one accessible stall in both sides of the restrooms. We've really studied this, and it's all we're able to fit.
I do want to say how much I appreciate that you're going to have a comfort station open during the off season, because once again, active birder, hawks and things are really great. And I mean, there's great birding all year round. So I'm up in that part of the park in the wintertime, and it's really nice to not have to go all the way to Conservatory Gardens. But I'm really concerned about not having any sort of temporary comfort stations, particularly for the Delacorte Theater, because it's going to be closed during the summer. And people are there for the theater. That just doesn't, that seems like a big problem to me. It's not.
I think the theater will also be closed at the same time.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, they'll overlap with the theater. So the idea is that the Delacorte project, the restroom, the pathwork, and the theater they're all overlap. It'll all be coterminous, and they will all be complete in the spring of 25.
Okay, well, that's great news, but still, it's a really central location. So I would think maybe in the Delacorte area, perhaps you would consider using some sort of, I mean, I'm not a big fan of porta potties, but maybe you could put something in there. Is that something you would consider?
We can look into it. I mean, I think they also pose their own challenges and complexities, and from a maintenance, point of view as well. But we can look into it for sure.
Thank you. That'd be great.
So I think at this point, at least I have liked what I've seen. And I think with the caveat about oversight or increasing oversight, especially in the Great Hill area, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve a resolution in favor of the project and the two projects as presented here tonight. Everybody voting in favor, please raise your hand.
7. That's 7. So that means that we can dispense with the rest of the voting.
Yeah.
That means all opposed, 0. All abstaining, 0. Anyone not voting for 12, 0. So the vote is 7 to 0 to 0 to 0. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. Looks like great work.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night.
All right, moving right along to item number 3, which is which concerns Riverside Park. 3A is the reconstruction of the bluestone stairs in Riverside Park at West 91st Street.
What if we flip the order into West Park first?
Oh, you want to do that?
Yeah, let's just do that. Get it over.
Okay. So my co-chair is recommending that we flip the order of the Riverside Park projects and discuss the West 105th Street staircase project first. Sybil, hi. Hi, Margaret.
Hi. Hi. I think that's fine with Margaret and I.
Great.
I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good evening. I'm Sybil Young. I'm Parks's Historic Preservation Officer. Thank you so much for having us back again to talk about the 105th Street steps in Riverside Park. Just to remind you of the overall scope of the project, the goals are to essentially restore them using matching historic materials and to install hand and guardrails at the steps. Here's the location at 105th Street within Riverside Park. Just some existing conditions photographs. As you can see, they are in poor shape, so this is much needed work. And then here is the original proposal for these stairs that was originally intended to match what was recently constructed at 102nd Street. This is a picture of 102nd Street, which was recently reopened. So the intent was to install a handrail down the center here, and then a guardrail that matched the guardrail up above. And it was for this proposal for which we did receive a resolution in support from the community board. However, we were asked to investigate the possibility of replicating this very ornate bronze handrail that was originally installed as a guardrail along the cheek wall here. So we did come back to the community board in June, noting that the estimated cost of that bronze guardrail was around $1 million, and we did not have the funding to cover that cost at this time. And at that time, the Parks Committee voted to uphold the original resolution in support of the design. Please correct me if I'm miscategorizing that at all, but I believe that's what did happen. Okay, great. But we understand that there is still concern out there that we are not replicating that bronze guardrail. So we've been talking a lot about it at Parks, and now have developed a new solution that we are hoping will be acceptable to all. And this is a plan showing that new solution. So we are no longer proposing a handrail at the center, and instead we would have a handrail along the east side of the steps, and then along the west side there would be a guardrail with a handrail, a guardrail at the landing, and a simple central guardrail at those lower steps. And what this does is it eliminates putting anything along that cheek wall, so that should funding be available and the desire to replicate that bronze guardrail in the future, there is nothing preventing that from happening. This is just a rough rendering of what the proposal will look like. And the plan again. So again, really it's just eliminating anything from that wall. So in the future, nothing precludes putting that bronze guardrail back, should the funding and desire be there to do so. And happy to answer any questions.
So can I just ask two questions really quick, just for clarification? One is, so there will not be a rail up the center of the steps?
Correct. No longer, just only at the lower steps. It's at the center, but and the longer runs there, it's at the sides.
And how wide is that across that stair?
Sorry, I had that plan.
It's 16 feet.
16. Oh, thanks, Margaret.
16 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then one other question, just for clarification, when you said ongoing concern, that has not come to the community board, that's been elsewhere.
Well, I think it was the concern we heard at the last meeting of the community board. The Public Design Commission has received calls, so we have heard more about it.
But it hasn't been brought back to our board.
It has not.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that. So Barbara?
Yeah, frankly, I liked the first proposal a lot better. I think for several of us on this committee, This is a very, very frustrating project. If memory serves me correctly, it was $900,000 to put in that center handrail in bronze. And I personally thought that the one that you had there was wonderful, and I like the center handrail better than the two on either side. However, you know, I will vote in favor of this because I want to see this project move forward. I think the most important thing here is safety overall for everybody, and there are so many projects in need in Riverside Park, and to spend almost $1 million for a handrail to replicate something that we believe had been stolen in the past, and that's why it's not there anymore, is insanity. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Avi?
Is there a major difference in cost between this plan and the original plan?
There should not be a major difference in cost. You know, we're, instead of a guardrail at the, it might even be cheaper because we're not having to core drill into a cheek wall. I don't have those figures, but it shouldn't be a major difference in cost.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room with a question or a comment? Anybody online, Arena, did you? I don't think your hand is up.
No, thank you.
All right, someone else's hand is.
Yeah, Natasha, Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Okay,
has her hand
Gail
raised.
Brewer has her hand up.
Okay,
I do.
great.
Thank you very much. I have my hand up because I don't know how Board 7 didn't get the calls, but I have gotten the calls. So my question is, what I should understand better. It might be just fine what you're doing and the other costs, but what is it that others, particularly from some of the preservation groups, want? And how is it different? I know it's a cost involved. Can you just explain that to me? Because they're quite adamant and I don't know how in the world Board 7 escaped.
Yes, I'll go back and show you. So when these steps were constructed, it had this very ornate bronze guardrail, along the cheek wall here.
That's what they want.
That's what they want. This is a detail of that bronze guardrail. And we did go back and look at the cost of replicating that. And because it's so ornate and the bronze, you know, a special mold has to be built to create this. We were getting an estimate somewhere around $1 million for just that bronze guardrail.
Okay, and so what is it that you're putting in? How much is it costing that you're putting in? And how would the new, what you're putting in, not negate the bronze if in fact the money is there?
So what we're putting in is significantly less in cost. I don't have the exact number for this new proposal, but it should be roughly around what the guardrail we proposed before was, and I believe that was around $125,000 for that guardrail. And the reason it does not negate putting the bronze back in someday is that we're no longer putting anything along that wall. So the new guardrail is on the steps as opposed to the wall. So, you know, if we did get the funding in the future, there's nothing stopping us from putting the historic bronze guardrail there.
Okay, and when you put it in on the other, when did it go in on the other location? Was that recently or a long time ago? Because people are saying, how come, I'm just telling you, downtown gets X and uptown gets Y. It doesn't seem fair.
So a similar, or perhaps even the exact same design for a bronze guardrail is part of the DOT managed rotunda project down at the at 79th Street. So that was part of that very large, you know, millions and millions of dollars project that was included. It has not been installed. As far as we know, they don't have a cost proposal from the contractor for that yet, shop drawings or anything. So that has not made any progress yet, but it is included as part of the design for that project.
So that project will be the bronze guardrail.
It will be, correct, unless something changes in construction, but as designed, that is what is proposed.
All right, I'm trying, I have a lot of calls. I know Steve Simon thinks it's just from a few people, but they're quite adamant and I do need to be responsive. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure, thank you.
And next time I'm sending them to Max.
What was that?
What did you say?
Next time she sends the calls.
Oh, okay, the calls. Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to harp on this. I just want to be clear. So there's no railing straight up the middle of the steps.
That's correct. There is no railing. I can, this is what
And
that run will look like.
But there was going to be one when we approved it, right?
Correct.
I've got huge concerns about that for safety. I mean, I'm a grandma, a proud grandma, and I'm pretty fit, but I'll tell you, I tripped and fell in Central Park and broke my knee on uneven bluestone in 2020, whatever it was, 2021, and missed all of spring migration. So I have to say the thought of walking up, first of all, the thought of walking up stairs that need renovation but are being held up over a concern about an old detail, historic detail from 1936 is very upsetting to me. I don't know if Doug Kleiman's on the call, but I know Doug has concerns about his elderly parents going into the park. We've heard a lot of concerns about that kind of thing. So I think this should move forward very quickly. And I'm very concerned that the central handrail should be taken out. Very concerned. I will not vote for this. I think we should really stick with what we did originally. 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and I agree with what Barbara said about the frustration we feel that this has been somewhat hijacked.
Somewhat. Is there anybody else online who wants to comment on this? Alex?
Sorry, give me 1 second. My screen is.
Why don't we, I think Daria had a question. So while you're checking Alex, we'll go to Daria.
I'm just, hi, thank you. I'm just trying to understand, is it considered safer for the guardrail to go down the middle of this pathway versus moving it to the right? Is the compromise that we're making it less safe in order to add potentially in the future, this bronze feature? Is that the compromise?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. That's a very good question. And Margaret might know better than me, but I believe both of these solutions would meet code compliance for handrails. Margaret, do you know?
Well, I mean, I hear Susan's concerns, but I do kind of think, having a handrail down either side is, gives you, that's two opportunities to be holding something as you're going up and down the stairs. You can have people on one side, holding onto the handrail on the right and on the left-hand side rather than sharing the center handrail, because I have to say the historic guardrail doesn't have any benefit, in terms of something to hold on to. So with this solution, we do actually give two handholds as opposed to the previous design, which had one down the center, or our first design, which replicated the guardrail, which is actually on the top of this retaining wall, which is also an historic detail, had a circular rail on top. So you can conceivably hold that. So we've gone from, from having two opportunities to hold as you're going up and down the stairs to, to here. And were we to go with the historic condition on the western side, on the cheek wall, and the handrail down the center, there would only be one shared handrail.
Has there been any research done to see if the historic handrail could be made using a different material?
We have not really looked into that. I think from a preservation standpoint, the bronze was a significant feature of that guardrail. So I'm not sure we would necessarily consider that.
Okay.
They were pretty adamant about wanting the bronze.
Yeah.
The issue of the bronze.
Okay.
The reason why I keep going back to ask Alex if there's anybody who wants to speak is because, now we're hearing from Gail Brewer that she's received a lot of calls. I don't know who these people are. They never show up at our meetings. We hear that they go to the PDC and they're writing letters, but the Parks and Environment Committee and Community Board 7 has not received anything except for 1 or 2 people coming to the meetings. And then this being very thoroughly fleshed out. And then all of us voting on it. This has come to the committee now for the 3rd time, and it has been voted in committee twice and at the full board once. And yet there is nobody here online to talk about this. But there's something happening, something being concocted in the background. I feel like a pawn in this. When is this going to end?
Not to mention the amount of time that Sybil and Margaret have spent on this. We've had multiple meetings offline with them about this as they've worked on it. And we have a sinkhole in Riverside Park that's been there for 5 months that we keep talking about. And I mean, that's the kind of safety thing that needs focus, not a historic bronze handrail. And I just have to say, I think we should vote to sustain the original resolution that was voted unanimously. I think it was 9-0 to 0-0.
Bobby, did you have some?
I just wanted to respond. I think we should go with this resolution. It keeps everyone happy for the time being, and it seems to be just as safe as the previous resolution.
So Avi, you would rather go with this?
Yeah.
This.
I agree, though, that it needs to stop. We need to move on from this problem, but for now, it seems like they've come up with a reasonable agreement.
Well, my problem is that we work hard as volunteers for the community board. We hash things out, we vote on things, and then months later, we find out that somebody in the background who will not come to our community board meetings has decided to do something else. They're pulling some strings somewhere or the other. They're making a lot of phone calls to the council member's office, but not coming and engaging with us directly. My fear is that tonight we vote on whatever it is that we vote, and then we're back at square one again.
Yeah.
When maybe next month, 2 months from now, we'll be sitting here having the same conversation. That has to end. It's so frustrating.
I had a quick question. This is Daria again. Is this proposal something that was offered that will address concerns across the board for the constituents who have issues with the previous proposal? Because you're bringing it before us, it sounds like, multiple times. And I think this is a compromise that you are hoping will work. But will it really work? Is this something that you're throwing it at the wall and you're hoping it sticks for everybody? Or is this just another iteration? Will this solve the complaints?
Well, I think, we too were hoping that we could get feedback from everyone here and that it would meet everyone's needs. The only thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask one more clarification question? Has the original application been withdrawn officially from the LPC, the PDC? Is that correct?
From LPC, we have an advisory report that recommends that the original bronze guardrail, along the cheek wall be replicated. However, LPC is advisory in their review here, and that advisory report then goes to PDC for consideration. And we have not completed our process with PDC at this point.
Lorena, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. It seems to me that this proposal will not satisfy the people who want a replication of the bronze guardrail, right? So I think it was Daria's question. No, this is not going to satisfy them. But the question I have is whether this satisfies the committee. And going back to what Natasha said and what Susan said, the previous resolution was unanimously voted on, and I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it included the guardrail. So the bronze guardrail, unless I'm missing something. I remember being
That's correct.
Okay, so I agree with Susan, and I think it was Natasha, we should just reaffirm our earlier resolution in support of this project. And I think this idea of leaving space for the guardrail makes sense as long as the staircase as proposed meets code. But I feel like right now it's dangerous, and I don't think we should waste any more time, particularly if the people who want the bronze guardrail will not come to the meeting, will not assist the Riverside Park Fund, or I don't know what their new name is, in raising money for it. I think we should just move forward with our original resolution and support so that we can make this area safe.
I agree.
Let me just go around the room. How many people over here believe that we should stick with the original?
Well, why don't you, for the benefit of Avi, Daria, and Nora, who were not here, the original proposal was voted when, like 6 months ago?
It was in January, February.
And so, there was a proposal from Parks Department to address the safety issues and to do something that did not include bronze. It was voted unanimously. I believe the vote was 9-0 to 0, like big time unanimously.
6-0-0 for the committee, and then 9-0.
And then it went to the full board and was approved.
Yeah, 32 in favor, and then I forget what the others were, but 32 people in favor.
And that was in January and February. And so, and then an uproar arose. And you can hear, Natasha's usually so diplomatic, you can hear the frustration. I mean, I'm the one who's like the open, Natasha's very diplomatic. She's doing a good job tonight covering it, but it's very, very frustrating. And she says, to be volunteers, it's 8 o'clock at night. We spent a lot of time on this. My proposal, if the committee's okay with this, is to vote on reaffirming the original resolution. And then let Margaret and Sybil get on with their jobs. Does anybody second that? I'll second that. Thank you.
We vote first on confirming this plan, and then if that doesn't pass, we could vote on reaffirming the original resolution.
Right now, we've got a motion on the table to reaffirm the original one. If that fails, then we can do that. But I've got a motion on the table I'd like to have us vote on. That's okay. I think that's the way it's supposed to work. Yeah. So all in favor of supporting the original resolution? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. All opposed. 1. All abstaining. 0. And all not voting for cause. 0. Okay, so the resolution to affirm our original resolution passes 6-1 to 0. So I'm sorry, Avi. Great, thank you, Mark and Sybil. So let's so let's move on to the reconstruction of bluestone stairs.
Have you got it? Can you see it?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Well, this is a reconstruction, Margaret Bracken, landscape architect for Riverside Park. And I believe that Wes Hamilton is on the call as well, and he'll be talking to our park manager. He'll be talking to you later, I'm sure. So this is the reconstruction of the existing bluestone stair at 91st Street in Riverside Park. So we want to thank, as with many projects in the park, we want to thank Gail Brewer for the funding for this particular project. Oops. So our goals with the project are to reconstruct the existing bluestone stairs and improve accessibility in adjacent pavement conditions. So the stair is located right in the middle of the park between Riverside Drive on the right-hand side here, Hudson Waterfront on the left-hand side here, and the Henry Hudson Parkway here. So it connects this pedestrian walkway here with the lower level, a tunnel that goes under the Henry Hudson Parkway and then down to the waterfront. In spite of proximity to the waterfront, we have no problems whatsoever with flooding in this area, and also stormwater from either moderate or extreme from adjacent streets. Not a problem at all in this area. As I said, Riverside Park, facing on Riverside Drive, facing the residential area of the Upper West Side. So I'm looking at the adjacent neighborhood context, all in Riverside Park. So we have Hippo Playground, which is just a few minutes away. This is our stair here. Dinosaur Playground to the north, and the Riverside Clay Tennis courts along the waterfront. So this is our stair here, goes under the Henry Hudson Parkway here, and north or south, going north would takes you to the Riverside Clay Tennis courts on the waterfront. So looking at a little bit of the history of this park, it's in an area of the park that was built under Park Commissioner Robert Moses. So on the left-hand side, you see the original kind of Olmstedian design of Riverside Park, and this here is the New York Central Railway line. So currently at that stage, there was a retaining wall and the railway tracks were exposed. In the 1930s, under Parks Commissioner Robert Moses, he was able to get a lot of federal funding for grade crossing elimination. And this grade crossing elimination allowed them to double the size of the park and extend the park westward, creating a new bulkhead. Part of the work that was involved in that was then covering over the railway tracks. So we have this big concrete and steel structure, which is actually under the park. So a portion of the park is effectively like a green roof on top of this structure. And our stair is on the western side of this structure connecting to the waterfront. So this is looking at our location here. So these vents here are for the tunnel. We're adjacent to the tunnel, but we're not engaging with the tunnel. And the tunnel runs north-south here, and our staircase is here on the right-hand side. So looking at the existing materials, this was built in the 1930s under the Robert Moses administration, typical materials, bluestone risers, bluestone pavement on the landings, and there is an existing concrete cheek wall that runs along both sides, and it has a 3-foot wrought iron fence. We've got 2 existing light poles, both working, and existing plant material on both sides. So these are, looking at the landscape context, there are some existing trees, some existing flowering trees, canopy trees, and this is the one that is of most concern to us moving into construction, and we will proceed with caution because there is an existing honey locust that's at the top of the stairs. Looking at the condition of the stairs, as you can see, it's really a very attractive staircase. We have what we call in Riverside Park, park tenders, who garden both sides of these stairs. So they take very good care of the stair. The bluestone risers are as I said, in poor condition. They're not showing a great deal of movement, which seems to imply that the foundation might be in pretty good condition, but our plan is to reconstruct the foundation. You can see the bluestone pavers that are at the landing here and the wrought iron fence either side. Looking in more detail at the existing conditions, this is the one issue that we have with this site, as in this area here, we're on top of the tunnel, the concrete tunnel, the top of the tunnel slab. And to the left here, this is compacted fill. So there is a noticeable grade change between the existing pavement here and the actual risers here. This is the landscape immediately adjacent to the tree. So we want to stay away from that and proceed with extreme caution there. And this this image on the right-hand side shows you kind of the scale of the grade differential between the top riser of the stair and the adjacent pavement. So we have a little bit of ground to fill in there. Looking at the materials in detail, structurally, our engineers have looked at the cheek wall and they feel confident that it's in good condition, which is very good, because were we to have to replace that, that would be a lot more, much harder construction than what we plan to do. But based on their observations, we feel as if we can reconstruct portions of it. We plan to replace all of the existing bluestone risers with thermal bluestone and replace in kind the natural cleft. Natural cleft is a coarser finish, which is typical to the Moses era pavers in Riverside Park. Replace those with natural cleft pavers. And here are our materials here. looking at the, as I said, natural cleft bluestone pavers to match the existing layout at the landings, new thermal bluestone risers. We'll have to do some remedial paving top and bottom of the stairs in order to address paving conditions there, if there's any impact from construction. And our goal in, our solution basically to addressing the grade change at the top of the stair is to add another small landing and to add 2 or 3 additional risers so that we then get up to the grade of the adjacent pavement. This will involve extending the cheek wall up to that level and then a little bit north. And again, on the north side here, meeting the existing grade. The red line that you see there is the sort of the line, the western side of the tunnel. So as I said, we're not impacting or engaging with that at all. And we propose to remove the existing 3-foot wrought iron fence and replace it with a 4-foot fence and then install a handrail on that 4-foot fence. This stair is only 8 feet wide. So typically, in a lot of instances, we put a central handrail, but because it's relatively narrow, we're actually going to put a handrail, which will be an integral part of that 4-foot fence on both sides. So looking at our materials, we've done many a stair in Riverside Park. So we have a lot of precedents here for the materials that we would use. This was the one that we did at 87th Street many years ago, around about 2009. With the bluestone pavers on the landing and bluestone risers here, another one further uptown where you can actually see, this is actually an original historic detail here. So this is what we plan to install in the cheek walls either side, this 4-foot steel panel fence with the integral handrail and other instances of this used throughout the park. When we remove the existing bluestone, we do salvage some of the risers if they're in good condition. We have found historically, as we've worked through these reconstructions, it's actually better to use all new materials because it's hard to match old and existing. And typically there is some deterioration in the material when we remove it from, during the removals of the construction. So what we'll do is we'll salvage any material that's acceptable and we'll then use it at other reconstructions in the park. But for the purposes of this project, all of the materials will be new. And going back to our proposed layout, and thank you for listening, and please let me know if you have any questions. And it's nice to see you all in the same room around the table again.
Thank you. You should join us next time.
Yeah.
Going around the room, does anybody?
Excuse me 1 second. Hey, yeah. Margaret, you should join us in person. Look, we have plants.
They're my favorite.
They look real on Zoom.
Going around the room, does anybody have any questions or comments? Thank you, Margaret. What about Arena or anybody else on the Zoom?
No, thank you.
It's a cool question.
Yeah, I think.
Call a question. So all those in favor? Woo-hoo! 7. All those opposed, 0. All those, wait, I got it, abstaining, no, and 0, and then all those voting, not voting, but all 0. So that's 7 to 0 to 0 to 0. Moving on. Thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you very much.
Get home safely.
All right, so now moving on. The next item is a discussion with Deronda Rodriguez of the Central Park Precinct's Community Affairs Department. Is Deronda here?
Actually, yeah, Deronda is not on this call.
Yeah, also sorry, I thought I had my camera on. Also adding, yeah, no, she'd originally expressed a strong interest in coming. She requested specifically this month. We said okay, and she hasn't shown, and it wasn't one of those situations where she was here earlier and then left because it got late. She just simply didn't show, and we reached out and haven't heard back.
She was sent the Zoom link, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any new business?
Yes, I have an item for new business. Can I go ahead?
We're all.
Sorry, Arena. Can you, before you go ahead with the new business, I'd just like to call on Steve Simon from
I'm sorry.
Parks Arch. If he has anything to say, this has been an interesting conversation tonight about Riverside Park. If not, it's okay. Okay. We'll,
8:30.
I guess if he wants to speak, he'll chime in. But I'm sorry, Rin, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's
interrupt you,
okay.
but
We don't have to discuss this today, but I would like to put on the agenda a conversation about the food carts that are being permanently parked on the perimeter of Central Park. I know that there's one on 91st Street in Central Park West. All of the food carts on Central Park South are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I know that's also true of the museum. And there are other places around the park where the food carts no longer move. They used to come, at the end of the day and the carts would be hooked on vehicles and then they would be driven out and driven back in. And now what's happening is that around certain locations around the park, they're just there now 24 hours. 7 days a week. And I would like us to invite someone from concessions, from the Parks Department to come and just speak to us about this, because Central Park, as you know, is a historic, it's a historic park. And it's sort of like by default, these carts are now permanently placed on the perimeter of the park. They say they're temporary, but they're not really, because they never move.
and a lot of them are unlicensed.
I think that's also the case. But I just don't think that they should be permitted to be there every single day, all night long. I mean, fine, if it's not a historic landmark park, but I have issues with it. And I was wondering if we could just have a conversation with concessions to figure out how this happened.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I completely agree with you about that. My concern is that there seems to be no enforcement going on in the city right now. So, look at the motorcycles that don't even have license plates, and I'm talking about real motorcycles. They're all over the place. And
Right,
people
but
going on the bike lanes over and over and over again. It's just become the norm. They don't care. So why would these trucks, move?
Because the ones, I think the ones that are sort of staying there overnight, I think they're actually permitted. And I think that's the leverage we can use, is like, if you have a permit with the city to operate, then you have to remove your cart. I actually think that the Parks Department may have given select food carts permission to just stay there permanently. And that's the because the ones that I'm seeing, they close up at night. There's no one there, but they're just parked there on the sidewalk. And then the ones on in front of Merchant's Gate on at the Pulitzer Fountain opposite, I mean, not the Pulitzer Fountain, the main monument on Central Park South, but on the west side, they operate 24 hours a day. There is someone physically in there operating. It looks like, Coney Island. But the ones that I'm more concerned about, they actually close, but they keep the carts there. And I think they have a permit to operate.
Arena, I think Matt Genrich is here from the Parks Department. He has his hand up. Let's see if.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically for Central Park, but for Theodore Roosevelt Park, there shouldn't be any carts left overnight there. Just recently, earlier this month, I know PD, Department of Health, Department of Sanitation, and our Parks Enforcement did some outreach and walkthroughs around the museum And I know that our parks enforcement has previously been checking on making sure that vendors are legal and licensed there. So I can, at least for Theodore Roosevelt Park, I can circle back to our Borough Commissioner Perez and see if he got any information after that task force took place around the museum.
But Matt, this is not a problem, to my knowledge, outside of the Museum of Natural History. It's the Metropolitan Museum of Art that the carts don't move. They close, but they stay there, and they close. And then there are single food carts that are just staying. They're just staying on Central Park West overnight, and on Fifth Avenue overnight closed. And then the ones on Central Park South near the main monument, they're remaining open. I think that's how they get around the loophole, because they never close. But on the Upper West Side and some parts of the Upper East Side, they're just not moving their carts anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong on this, but it's my understanding that if a cart's not in operation, they're not supposed to be just parking there. They're supposed to leave the site.
Exactly. And I think they stay there because they're afraid another cart might take their spot. And this is the slippery slope, because this is what happened on Fifth Avenue.
Arena, I think this is a good topic to bring up. I think we'll reach out to Steve Simon and see who can come here and talk, more holistically on this problem. It seems to be Central Park West, Central Park South, everywhere, so let's see who we can get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just have one quick item. Are we still doing new business?
Sure.
Just really quickly, it's a Parks and Environment Committee. It's Climate Week this week, so everyone knows that. But one of the things that has always been an issue in our neighborhood has been the Global Citizen Festival, which happens, which is happening, I believe, on Saturday. And Gail, since you're on the call right now, it's usually been like hordes of people and lots of trash and lots of stuff. It's a great event and it's fantastic. And we all care about Climate Week, but just raising that as a kind of nothing we can do about it, but just raising it tonight.
Yeah, they don't give any money to New York. It goes overseas.
Right. Yeah.
I find frustrating.
So happy Climate Week. Otherwise.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I think we're
Are we done?
Are we?
Great meeting,
I'm gonna
guys.
bring this puppy in under 2 hours if it kills me. Matt, one more comment?
Yeah, I believe Max has the flyers, but if he doesn't, I will send them around. Just a reminder, there's a movie night this Friday at Playground 89. And then on September 30th, there's going to be a family fun day at Frederick Douglass Playground from noon to 3. So Max,
Great.
if you don't have those flyers, I'll send them over to you so you can post them.
Sounds good. We're planning on sending them out on our Friday morning newsletter.
Thank you.
Thank you. A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Look at that. 1 hour and 58 minutes.
Thank you.